Welcome to another episode of Britannia BQ. Now, I've actually got a confession to make. I filmed this prime rib that we're going to be looking at last week, but it was on my birthday. I've been up since like 6:30 a.m. prepping it, and we were so anxious to eat that we forgot to film the intro after we cut it open. So I've got those shots playing right now, so you can take a look at what we're going to be cooking. If you want to learn how to make this awesome prime rib, go ahead and watch the rest of this video, and let's get cooking. Actually, as Jesse Pinkman says, let's cook, bitches! Today on Britannia BQ, it's actually my birthday, and instead of trying to take our whole family out to dinner with all the COVID restrictions at the restaurants here in New Mexico, we decided to just get a really nice prime rib from our local butcher and put that on the Traeger and have everyone over here tonight for dinner. So you can see we're up at the crack of dawn here because I put this in the fridge uncovered last night to let it form a pellicle overnight by air drying, and now this morning it's time to apply some seasoning. I'll once I finish applying the seasoning, I'll wrap it in saran wrap, put it back in the fridge for the next about 6 hours or so, and then we'll actually turn on the cameras again and start smoking it. So with prime rib, I don't want to do a really heavy seasoning. I want to make sure that the flavor of the meat really gets a chance to shine. So I'm going to be using some sweet paprika from Penzeys, just enough to cover the whole thing. A little bit of a Hatch red chili powder, not very much because my nieces are going to be eating this too, and I don't want that to burn them. I want them to enjoy it too. Garlic salt, basil, and oregano. And of course, I'll be using an olive oil as a binder. Normally, if I had the chance, I'd be adding Penzeys or herbs from Penzeys into this, probably herbs de Provence, but I don't have any right now, and I'll be grabbing that when I'm in Phoenix next week. There we go. So that's a really easy rub I just put together, and I can just mix it all together. And this is probably about a third of a cup of volume altogether with all this in here. That should be just enough to cover this whole prime rib. So I'm going to just take some olive oil, drizzle it on the meat, and spread it out just a bit. And start applying the rub here. So what I like to do when I'm applying a rub is let each side sit for a few minutes before turning it over and applying it. If I was just going to be leaving it out, like maybe if I was making a pork shoulder or something, I'd just leave it out, and before I even turn it, I would wait maybe a half hour. But since I'm going to be wrapping this in saran wrap and letting it sit in the fridge for, like I said, about 6 hours, I'm just going to go ahead and apply the seasoning to all the sides right now. So one quick note about applying your seasoning to prime rib. I didn't realize this when I asked my butcher. He tied it up for me. I was expecting to get it and trim it myself and be able to show you guys that. But if you do trim it yourself, when you make your hinge out of the slab of bone meat here, you can also apply seasoning in there before you twine up the whole thing. So that's just something to keep an eye out if you do get an untwined prime rib or a completely untrimmed prime rib from your butcher. And now that I've got my prime rib all seasoned up, and I'm just going to take a few pieces of saran wrap and cover this whole thing up. Okay, now we got a nice, it doesn't have to be airtight or anything. We just want to hold in any juices that might come seeping out as some of the seasoning gets into the meat. And we'll be back in just a second here when you see me putting this beautiful piece of meat onto our Traeger. Finally, waited 6 hours with this in the fridge after applying all of that great seasoning this morning. So now it's time to unwrap my little birthday present here and take a look at how it looks. See how the colors and everything are starting to turn out for us. All right, we've got a really nice color on all the sides, and you know, I think this thing's just ready to go straight on the grill. So let's make this snappy. I'm going to be cooking this initially at just 165. As you can see on the grill here, I've also got some portobello mushrooms I'm going to be doing as a side dish. If you want to know how to make that smoked mushroom recipe, it's delicious. Go ahead and find the link in the description below. I'll copy it there. But for this prime rib, I'm going to put the thicker end towards the back there. Kind of get it right on the center of this top rack here. I want it, far away from all the heat. Now, I've put my temperature probe through this little rubber grommet on the side of the Traegers. If you guys don't know that that's there, that's an awesome little thing. That way you don't have the wire sneaking out the side. Now, I want to make sure I talk about this when you're going to be cooking something like a prime rib that is only going to get up to like 125 internal probably. You want to make sure you clean your probe really, really well. If I'm doing something like a pork shoulder that's going to be up to 300 degrees and be there for a long time, I'll maybe not, I won't like disinfect it and everything. But with this, you don't want a bunch of germs festering on the inside of your prime rib, guys. So you always want to make sure you really like disinfect this probe really well before you cook a prime rib. And I can just stick it right in the middle, down the side, all the way in. Go ahead and route that wire so it's not in the way. And I can go ahead and close up the Traeger here. And I'm going to turn on the Traeger, bring it up to 165, super smoke mode, and I'll keep it there for probably 1 to 2 hours. Somewhere in that range. It'll depend on just when I feel like it's starting to get a nice, when it's starting to get nice and cooked. It's not going to render the fat or anything at that temperature, but when it gets to above like 100 degrees or so internal, you're not going to get any more smoke flavor really at that point. So we can just we can go ahead and crank it up once it reaches an internal temperature of maybe 100 degrees or so. In order to keep the length of this video shorter, I decided to break out the au jus into a separate video. You can see the link for that video and the full recipe in the description below or in the cards on the screen right now. So now we've got our au jus prepared, and our my prime rib is sitting at about 71 degrees at the very internal temperature. That means the outside is starting to get fairly well cooked. So it's time to take a look at this piece of meat. It's looking really nice. So the other reason I placed this prime rib on the very top tray here is so I would have room to slide this in. Now everything that drips off of that grate is going to go directly into my drip pan here. It will also help protect it from indirect heat once I turn the temperature up. I can go ahead and close that. Adjust the temperature on the Traeger up to 375. That's going to turn off the super smoke mode because that's only enabled between 165 to 225. But that's okay because we've already got all the smoke flavor we're going to want on that piece of meat. And at this point, it's just a waiting game until it gets to right around 125. I'm going to take it out. At that point, wrap it in foil, put it into a cooler, let it rest while the rest of our meal is prepared. And I'll see you guys when we get to that point. So we're back after having the prime rib in the smoker for, it was initially about an hour at 165 while I had that mushroom side dish, which of course, if you want the recipe for those smoked mushrooms, look in the description below. I've Did another hour at about 180 to just speed things up a little bit while still keep getting the smoke flavor in there. When my internal temperature reached around about 65 or so, I cranked the heat up to 375 degrees. I placed my drip tray in here to catch all the good stuff coming off this prime rib, and I waited until the internal temperature. For me, I waited until an internal temperature of 120 because I'm going to be wrapping this thing in foil, double wrapping it in foil, placing it in a cooler. Then I have time to prepare all of the rest of my meal while this rests and let all those juices in the middle finish rendering the fat as much as they can and just soaking through the meat without losing any moisture. So let's go ahead and take this guy out. First things first, you can use a big fork like this to take out the temperature probe. That way you don't burn yourself on it. Then I'm just going to place this here and work it onto my tray. Get my temperature probe out of the way. Bring it over here. And before we go any further, let's just get a close-up kind of all-around look at this piece of meat, because it looks absolutely gorgeous. Wait, is that actually going? Okay. Just to reduce some of the noise interference, I'll close that for right now. So I'm gonna grab this guy, bring it over here. Got enough overlap on one side here so that I can bring this up just to the top of the meat. Fold this over. And I'm gonna turn it around and do the opposite here. Double wrapping does two things. Keeps a little more heat in, also prevents leaks because I don't want to have to clean out this cooler from a bunch of prime rib juice later, and I want that juice to put into my drip tray. So as you can see, I've got this prime rib double wrapped in the cooler, sealed up, and it will be good to sit there and rest until I am ready to take it out, slice it up, and eat. Okay, so we've had our prime rib resting, double wrapped in foil in the cooler for probably about 45 minutes while we got our mushrooms ready, our broccoli, all the other stuff we're gonna eat tonight. So now I can go ahead and snip off all of these pieces of twine. There we go. I'll get those out of the way in a minute. What we really want to do is get this center piece out, cut right into the center here. Oh, that's on a bone. I could not see. Damn it. We'll go ahead and turn it over so I can see the bones. That's okay, it'll be a nice cut there. And as you can see, it's super tender, super juicy. The flavor is amazing. I'm going to go ahead and cut off one little slab here. Dip it in those juices there. Oh man, that is just like ridiculously tender meat. You can just like tear it apart almost. And that is one of the best pieces of beef I've ever had in my life. I gotta have another. So if you like what you saw here today, don't forget to hit the subscription button, hit the bell so you get notified whenever we have something new coming out. And you can always visit us at nmbbqtrue.com. That's NM as in New Mexico, bbqtrue.com, and we'll have all of our videos up there. You can buy merchandise, and you can see everything that's coming up. Thanks again for watching, and this prime rib is definitely gringo tested and Burqueño approved. So good.